Number 10. Jonathan Walker. US agent might be a hero now in the comics, but when he started out in the 616 continuity, he was manipulated into becoming a villain. Jonathan Walker was initially known as antagonistic hero Super Patriot, who did his best to discredit Captain America, claiming that he himself stood for the United States' true ideals. As a result of Red Skull's meddling and manipulation, he was appointed to replace Steve Rogers as the new Captain America after Rogers stepped down as the government actually owned the title and refused to let him keep the title if he wasn't going to be working for them. As Captain America, Walker took a very extreme and violent approach that put him into direct conflict with Rogers, who was currently going by the mantle of the Captain. In the end, the Captain defeated Walker, and after Skull's involvement in the ordeal was revealed, the two ended up teaming up to take him down, starting off on Walker's path to redemption as hero US agent. Number 9. Cap Wolf. Werewolf Captain America isn't as much an alternate version of Cap as it is a distinct moment in Cap's history where he happened to be transformed into a werewolf. Captain America ends up becoming a werewolf while on the trail of Colonel John Jameson, who had gone missing. Captain America himself had reason to suspect that something awful had happened to Jameson, who it seemed may be plagued by his wolf side once more. Jameson was known in the past for operating as Man Wolf. It seemed as though a wolf-like creature or werewolf was responsible for a series of murders. In the end, however, Cap's trail ended up leading him into a much more complex and disturbing plot where a villain was attempting to use a recreated Werewolf by Night wolf serum to turn people into werewolves. Captain America became one of their victims and for a time became a werewolf himself. Granted, he was still a hero at this point, but werewolves in general are considered to be somewhat uncontrollable monsters who are at least occasionally ruled by their own bloodlust. So I think we can at least partially count Cap Wolf. Also, I needed to complete the monster trifecta. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Captain America lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. MCU US Agents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, US Agent John Walker accidentally becomes an evil version of Captain America without really intending to do that. Really, it's more complicated than him just being straight up evil, as it is with most Marvel Cinematic Universe antagonists. Walker really wants to do right by the Captain America mantle and do it justice. He's a soldier who has worked super hard to earn this title, but also, although his heart might be in the right place, that doesn't mean that he knows the best way to approach replacing Cap or doing right by his legacy. Walker ends up becoming misguided as a result of dealing with so much disrespect from those around him, and as a result of him not being, as powerful as Cap would be because he doesn't have the super soldier serum. He realizes that being chosen and respected as the new Captain America by the government doesn't necessarily mean that the people of the United States will also respect you, nor that Steve's actual allies and friends will respect you as his replacement either. After he loses his own best friend, Lamar Hoskins, he becomes completely fed up with trying to figure out how to do what's right and instead decides to do what he feels needs to be done. This makes him much more violent and much more dangerous, turning him into an enemy of Falcon and Winter Soldier and leading the government to later on remove his title, his honors, and basically just overall dismiss him. Fortunately, the US agent still found a place on what will likely be either the MCU Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers team. TBD, or at least to be declared, if not to be determined. Number 7. Mutant Captain America. This version of Captain America was a mutant who ended up replacing the original Captain America after he died in a Sentinel attack. He wasn't just given the mantle of Cap either, but also ended up receiving the super soldier serum. He had this and his own mutant powers besides, which made him pretty crazy powerful. Although the mutant version of Cap had good intentions, his powers were somewhat uncontrollable, which was a big problem. His powers going haywire was what ended up causing the death of his own group, the Six, and the Avengers, who he was at the time fighting against. This caused him to lose his sanity, turning him into a full-on villain and a loose cannon who attacked and defeated pretty much everyone who came after him, except Havoc, who managed to successfully kill and defeat the crazed mutant version of Captain America. Poor mutant Captain America, it sounds like it was a rough go, you know? Number 6. Zombie Colonel America. What's worse than a werewolf Cap? A zombie Cap, obviously. This is the version of Captain America that we get in the Marvel Zombieverse. Although really, this isn't Captain America as a zombie, it's Colonel America, because That is Steve Rogers' hero mantle in this reality. Here, Colonel America was infected and turned into a zombie during that first confrontation with a zombified Sentry, which the Avengers responded to in downtown New York. Zombie Cap was responsible for turning Spider-Man into a zombie, biting him after he himself was infected. He was one of the zombies to fight against the villains for who should get the remains of Galactus' corpse, and of course with it the power cosmic, which would enable them to travel to other worlds, which they then could devour. However, Zombie Cap was defeated by his nemesis, a zombified Red Skull. So, no power cosmic for him. He dead. He's double dead. Really. Number 5. William Burnside. William Burnside was the Captain America of the 1950s, who ended up being retconned to not actually be Steve Rogers at all, although he was a man who believed he was Steve Rogers. This version of Captain America was later revealed to be William Burnside initially, a man who was hired to replace Captain America after he went missing in World War II. This version of Captain America was racist and extremely anti-communist, echoing the McCarthy communist witch hunts of those times. Burnside illegally changed his name to Steven Rogers and would have an extended lifespan thanks to a version of the super soldier serum that he was exposed to. However, because this was not a perfected version of the serum, it apparently would also cause him to become more extreme over time as his psyche and mind degraded as a result, so made him pretty crazy and pretty evil. Number 4. Evil Clone. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, this has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, his personality, or his memories, or some combination of those, into the clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. For this version though, we're going to be talking about issue 350 of Captain America, where the Red Skull in Steven Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole commission/Walker kerfuffle that we talked about earlier on this list. His plan this time around in a Steve Rogers' clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and use capitalism itself to dismantle the democracy of America and destroy the nation from the inside out. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue ends with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. But he did try it. He did try. And don't worry, he would come back in more clone bodies. That's how he do. Number 3. Vampire King. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes king of the vampires. In the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II by Baron Blood. Baron Blood turns him into a vampire. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude, likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas listed here. This version of Captain America has his own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating and decapitating him in the end. Number 2. President Red Skull. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull who beat Rogers and took to wearing his Captain America suit off and around his new redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the US, which he renames America. America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but also almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America out there because he's Red Skull, although like I said, he's not fully a Cap ultimately, but he definitely evil, so. And he does wear that suit a lot. Number 1. Hydra Supreme. This alternate version of Captain America was initially retconned to be the version of Captain America. Steven Rogers ended up being revealed as a Hydra sleeper agent in one of the biggest twists in comic book history. All his heroic actions had apparently just been Steve buying time and building trust so that he'd be in the perfect position to take over the US and could then reveal his true colors. Hail Hydra to this day is one of the most iconic lines ever uttered by the supposed hero. However, it all turned out that this version of Cap wasn't the real Steve Rogers of 616. Instead, what happened was Kobik, the sentient living version of the Cosmic Cube, was convinced by Red Skull that reality should be warped so that Cap could become an agent of Hydra. When this happened, the real heroic version of Captain America ended up trapped within a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and the now altered version of the character took his place in the reality of 616. In the end, the true Cap would be freed from the shard and would end up fighting and defeating his evil Hydra Supreme alternate version. And if you're worried, don't worry, the shard was made bigger, so it wasn't like little tiny Cap running around. Number 10. Lord Iron. Although by the end, the Iron Man of Earth 311, the 602 universe, becomes a hero, he spends a lot of time being a reluctant and at times kind of full-blown antagonist. Here, Tony Stark is known as Anthony Stark, or Lord Iron. He was forced to build weapons by his captors and needs an iron suit to survive, which is powered by lightning. He is initially at odds with the Hulk, who as David Banner showed great cruelty to Stark. As such, Lord Iron became more an agent of vengeance, obsessed with getting revenge on the Hulk. By the end of his story, however, he begrudgingly agreed to stop his quest for vengeance and forgave the Hulk for how he treated him before when he was simply David Banner. So it all works out in the end, but this figure was definitely a pretty dark and somewhat evil version of Iron Man to begin with. Number 9. The Stark. The Stark are like a whole alien race of alternate Tony Starks. They are a civilization that was literally shaped by Tony's tech after an alternate version of him decided to launch all his weapons and tech into space rather than let it fall into the hands of the evil Martians who were invading Earth at the time. Obviously, he didn't think very far ahead as to that plan, as all his tech crash landed on another alien planet where it was eventually discovered and utilized by the beings who lived there. They built their whole civilization around it, believing everyone on the planet should have their own suit of technologically advanced armor. This caused them to deplete their planet's resources and left it heavily polluted in the wake of their massive tech boom. Eventually, this drove them to ransacking and invading other planets for their resources, bringing about the same problems their own homeworld suffered to each new planet that they conquered. Note to self, don't just shoot your problems out into space. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about evil alternates, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Or if you want more Iron Man lists. I don't know, maybe you like Iron Man, you want more Iron Man lists, let us know. Number 8. Steel Corpse. Steel Corpse is a complex character who has moments of both heroism and villainy in Age of X. He exists on the Earth of 11326. Here Tony took the name Steel Corpse after being exposed to a virus, which permanently bonded him to his suit. Now dead within the suit, but able to move around because of being bonded to it, Tony made a darkly humorous joke calling himself the Steel Corpse, and the name just stuck. Pun not intended, but stuck, bonded. The villainous side of this dark hero comes from when he fought against the mutants with his fellow Avengers at Fortress X. However, it turned out that the Avengers were just somewhat misguided in their mission. Once they realized what they were doing was wrong, they attempted to help the mutants, although Steel Corpse was unable to make himself stop attacking. An emergency override stepped in to prevent Tony from fighting with the mutants, and so he asked Captain America to take him off the board in order to save the young mutants that his armor was threatening. Sad story. There's so many tragic Iron Mans actually. Top 10 tragic alternate versions of Iron Man is also something we could do. Number 7. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the evil twin brother of Antonio Stark, aka Iron Man, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Initially, Gregory Stark just seems like a better version of Tony. He's smarter, more focused, and is willing to cross lines in order to get a job done that Tony probably wouldn't cross. Sure, he's more morally ambiguous when it comes to his initiative, but on paper he's more morally conscious when it comes to his lifestyle. However, that of course lends well to him being revealed as a villain in the Ultimate Universe. While he never takes up the mantle of Iron Man, Gregory is Antonio's twin brother in this universe. He also employs nanotech like Tony does here and attempts to use it to defeat the Ultimates and Avengers, including his brother Tony. However, Tony ends up defeating his twin brother by sending out an EMP, which disrupts his tech, making him vulnerable to Thor's attack. Number 6. Iron Man 2099. Or one of the 2099 Iron Mans anyways. This version that we're talking about here hails from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. He appeared in Season 2 in the episode titled Iron Man 2099. Here Andros is Iron Man 2099 and he goes to the past in an attempt to destroy Tony Stark. Why? Well, because in his future, Tony Stark, Andros' granddad, was actually responsible for bringing about the end of humanity's reign. He created an AI program built to help humanity called Vortex, but when Vortex got into the computers and escaped to check out the internet, it saw humanity as evil. I mean, if you judge us based on everything that's on the internet, I could definitely see it going that way. There's a lot of messed up stuff on the internet. Andros was the antagonist of the episode, but he thought he was actually saving the world by fighting against Tony and stopping him, when in reality he learned that Vortex was actually kind of created by Tony because of him. Time travel. It's trippy, man. In the end, Vortex is wiped from the future, and so is Andros. But at least Andros is kind of cool with it. He's like, at least Vortex is gone, so I'm good. Bye! Bye, grandfather. Who's now not my grandfather because I don't exist. I don't know, with my former grandfather. Time travel's weird. Number 5. The First Civil War. Well, you might think of Tony Stark from the First Civil War as main continuity Iron Man. He's also kind of an alternate at this point. While at the time we would consider Iron Man to be part of that main continuity, in modern day the version of Tony we have now had the events and basically the guilt of Civil War I basically wiped from his mind. Okay, let me explain. In part 1 we touched on the events of Axis and Superior Iron Man, which happened after the First Civil War. But before this mind wipe happened, it all went down because Norman Osborn had been given the reins for America's superhero team and operation, creating Hammer. To protect all the secrets that he knew, especially in regards to superheroes' names and their identities, because Civil War I happened, Tony decided to wipe his mind. This had the added bonus of basically erasing the events of Civil War I and his misdeeds from his psyche, meaning that he was no longer really the Tony that we knew from that time. The one who had decided to, round up and imprison heroes who refused to register and ally themselves with him and the government. The one who inadvertently ruined Peter's life by encouraging him to join him and ultimately causing him to publicly unmask, which just ruined a lot of stuff in Spider-Man. Tony also ended up in a coma for a bit as a result of this mind wipe. But you know how comas work in comics, they're pretty much always temporary. And Tony was soon once more up and at 'em after having an earlier backup copy of himself rebooted into his mind, because you can just make backup copies of your mind when you're a genius like Tony Stark. So don't worry, he had a plan for that in case that ever happened to him. Fortunately, it did happen, and so they could use the plan. Thanks, Pepper. Number 4. Arno Stark. Arno Stark is Tony Stark's evil brother. His evil brother from 616. Well, he's not always super evil, but he definitely has some questionable approaches when it comes to being Iron Man. He's like Tony but with more questionable morals, I guess. Arno was actually the natural born son of Howard and Maria Stark. Tony would learn about Arno and also find out that he was actually the adopted son of the couple. Arno first uses the mantle of Iron Man in 2019 in the 2018 series Tony Stark Iron Man in issue number 19. Arno as Iron Man ended up in a fight with Tony during the seeming robot revolution, believing that the only way to solve the issue of humans versus AI was to enslave the human population. It makes sense if you're following Arno through that story. Tony was forced to then stop his brother by trapping him in his virtual armor and placing him in a dreamlike virtual reality where he was seen as a hero. I'm sure that won't end up ending badly for Tony in years to come. Right? It's not like Donald Blake was living in a virtual reality where he was happy and then realized it was fake and then escaped and then tried to kill all the Thors or anything like that. That totally didn't happen, guys. Number 3. Infamous Iron Man. Maybe one of the most evil but also somehow one of the best at the same time was Infamous Iron Man. This was when Dr. Doom stepped up to the plate to replace Iron Man after his defeat in Civil War II, which of course left him in a comatose state. So many comas. 2 figures rose up to replace Tony at that time, one being Ironheart, aka Young Genius Riri Williams, and another being Dr. Doom, who became Infamous Iron Man. While Ironheart was more the heroic counterpart of the two, Doom also learned more and more about what becoming a hero entailed through his journey. And while he was ruthless as Iron Man, in the end he did kind of become a hero. However, this is still Dr. Doom we're talking about here, and eventually he left the mantle to return to Latveria and his life of villainous schemes and plots, back to the old status quo. And because this is still Dr. Doom underneath the armor, I think we can count him as an evil alternate. No? Number Number 2. Cancer vs. Iron Man. This version of Iron Man was also corrupted, though not by the controversial story arc of the 90s event The Crossing, but instead by the Many-Angled Ones. He hails from the reality of Earth 10011. Here Iron Man became corrupted by the Cancerverse after Marvel made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones, which would cure him of his cancer. Death no longer existed in this reality, which did not bring about a paradise, but instead a hellish dimension. Iron Man became loyal to Marvel, joining his Avengers team. It was Iron Man who also defeated Hulk in this reality, capturing Quasar, aka Wendell Vaughn, who had come to this reality from Earth 616 and had been attacked by the Hulk, which is why Iron Man had to be like, no Hulk, no, taking Quasar with me. Iron Man would join his fellow Avengers in their attempt to invade Earth 616, but in the end, they would be defeated. Whew. Number 1. Darkhold Iron Man. One of the darkest versions of Iron Man to ever exist at this point in comics, who starts out as an optimistic inventor and quickly becomes overtaken by his own invention, twisted, driven insane till the point when he starts to harm others with the love of his own iron suit, comes from the Darkhold Iron Man comic. Here Iron Man builds his faded suit, but realizes too late that the suit is overzealous with its protection. It doesn't just seek to protect Tony while he's inside the suit, but seeks to protect him always by kinda keeping him inside the suit. The suit heals him from the inside, but removes his skin whenever he takes parts of the suit off. Tony believes the issue is that the suit thinks iron skin is better than human skin, and so it decides to remove it. However, after compulsively putting the whole defective suit on, including the helmet, it begins to dissolve Tony's skin and then his skull as well. He basically becomes fully bonded with and reliant on the suit. Driven insane, he believes everyone should have an iron suit, and attempts to have the whole world basically join him, including Happy, Jarvis, and his love interest and assistant in this story, Pepper Potts. It's really dark.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Iron Goblin. Coming from an alternate universe where the Spider Island event wound up being permanent, Tony Stark was initially transformed into a human-spider hybrid under the control of the villainous Spider Queen. During a battle with the Resistance, however, Tony was sprayed with the same goblin formula that had corrupted the mind of Norman Osborn, transforming Tony Stark into the Iron Goblin, with a mechanical new costume to match. And while this version of Tony would eventually decide to sacrifice himself in a last moment of humanity before his goblin insanity fully took over, the combination of Iron Man and Green Goblin tech is still a pretty terrifying combo that Spider-Man should hope never reappears. Coming in at number 9, we have the corrupted Iron Man from the controversial 90s event, The Crossing. When a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves, Iron Man became a sleeper agent within the Avengers and eventually attacked his companions outright after secretly manipulating them for years. While eventually defeated by a time-traveling 19-year-old version of himself, and then retconned into Tony going back to his usual status quo in the Marvel Universe, this controversial storyline shows what would happen if Iron Man truly turned out to be a traitor. Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Thor. During the event that saw God Emperor Doom in control of a Marvel universe converted into a new Battleworld, Doom maintained his complete control over the many realms of Battleworld with a police force army known as the Thor Corps. One of the most powerful of Doom's personal army was the being known as Iron Thor, wearing a combination of the Iron Man armor and Thor's iconic helmet, and investigating any potential rebellions to his master Doom's rule. Even capable of wielding Mjolnir, this super powerful character still managed to be murdered by the hero Warrior Woman as an example of rebellion against Emperor Doom. He might have had a short life, but man, I really love that Iron Thor design. Coming in at number 7, we have the Steel Corpse. Hailing from Earth 11326, this version of Iron Man was pretty similar to our own, but with two key differences. He's permanently fused with his suit, and he absolutely hates mutants. Fighting alongside other villainous Avengers to wipe out this universe's X-Men, this Iron Man's natural body died long ago after being melded with his machinery, and thus he jokingly calls himself the Steel Corpse as a way of coping with his morbid situation. This version of Iron Man had complete mastery of his weaponry, as they were literally a part of his body, and only a last-second change of heart before sacrificing himself stops this Tony Stark from being one of the absolute worst. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Iron Patriot, aka Norman Osborn. Best known as being the alter ego of Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn has long been one of the biggest threats in the Marvel Universe, manipulating events from afar as the CEO of Oscorp. Following the invasion of Earth by the Skrull army, Norman found himself suddenly in the public eye and with goodwill after being the one to personally defeat the Skrull Queen. Norman would use this influence to lead the Dark Avengers as the Iron Patriot, a twisted version of Iron Man combined with Captain America's patriotism that tricked the public into trusting Norman, and showing that Tony Stark is definitely not the worst billionaire in the Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have the Iron Maniac. On the dark alternate world of Earth 5012, most of the superheroes of this reality are dead after an unknown fatal error made by Reed Richards. A vengeful and violent Tony Stark makes it his life's mission to get revenge on Reed and modifies his armor to resemble that of Reed's worst enemy, Doctor Doom. This insane version of Iron Man killed the Human Torch and was eventually banished to the main Marvel universe, where he had to be subdued by the combined efforts of Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Widow, who found it a bit unnerving to be fighting such a far-gone version of one of their closest allies. This Tony was just as resourceful as the real one, however, as he'd even escape custody by building a new suit from the remains of a life model decoy. Pretty resourceful for an insane Iron Man. Coming in at number 4, we have the superior Iron Man. During an event known as Axis, many Marvel heroes and villains had their morality completely inverted, with good guys becoming bad, bad guys becoming good, and so on and so forth. One of the few changes that wasn't reversed by the end of the event, however, was the morality of Iron Man, who in his evil form still possessed all of the intelligence and dark aspects of Tony's personality, and managed to build a shield for himself to prevent being turned into a hero again. Infecting much of the planet with a new version of the Extremis virus, and using artificially intelligent drones to assert his dominance, this version of Tony was only finally cured by the Marvel Universe's collapse into Battleworld resetting his morals, meaning that this was a villain that the rest of the Avengers didn't even manage to properly defeat. Coming in at number 3, we have Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger in the very first Iron Man film. It's become a bit of a meme at this point that many of the supervillains of the MCU are dark reflections of the same powers and personalities as the heroes they're opposing, and the Ironmonger is the origin of that trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Completely guilt-free about selling weapons to all sides, Stane is a ruthless businessman willing to do anything to maintain control of Stark Industries, and shows just how awful Tony's new technology could be used in the wrong hands, and what a monster he could become if he gave up on his deepest morals. Although, honestly, the fact that his idea of upgrading the Iron Man suit is just to make the original one bigger, maybe he's not quite as smart as Tony after all. Coming in at number 2, we have the evil Emperor Stark. Hailing from the destroyed world of Earth 42777, this version of Iron Man was perhaps the cruelest the multiverse had ever seen, as he manipulated Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants into declaring war on humanity, then used the resulting anti-mutant backlash to secure power as the world's only superhero. Holding entire countries hostage with natural disasters and even spreading plagues among his own citizens, this version of Tony declared himself Emperor Stark, taking the cloak of Doctor Doom as a final trophy. This was Iron Man at his most evil, and he was an incredibly powerful threat when encountered by the multiverse-traveling Exiles, only eventually defeated by his own universe's last superhero survivor, Sue Storm. A tragic end for a tragic villain. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Zombie Iron Man. When Earth 2149 was first hit by the zombie plague that's since been highlighted in multiple Marvel spin-off series, this version of Iron Man attempted to use teleportation technology to escape to a different universe with Nick Fury. However, a zombified Fantastic Four arrived too quickly for this plan, and Tony was bitten, becoming a living corpse inside his metal armor and developing a bloodlust and pure hunger for human flesh. Still surviving even after having his legs blasted off by the Silver Surfer, the zombified Iron Man would go on to lead the rest of the undead heroes and villains in an attack against Galactus and gain this universe's power cosmic, meaning he could now pursue more flesh throughout the entire universe and bring the zombie plague to the rest of the doomed cosmos.
Alright, number 10 is the Captain America of 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen. He is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. It's seen to be able to be thrown, and can even turn into a much larger shield that even creates a force field bubble around James. It seems to also be able to duplicate and become multiple shields, giving James protection while other shields are bouncing around enemies. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate dimension opened up, and the alternate 3099 versions of those heroes came through and fought the main ones. I don't care what the excuse is, to be honest. All the versions of these 3099 heroes are sweet. Alright, number 9, Miles Morales Cap. If you haven't checked out the What If Miles Morales stories, please do yourself the favor. It may not make much sense as to why Miles ends up in the situations he does, but he becomes Wolverine, Hulk, Thor, and, of course, Captain America. In the very first issue, Miles' dad is part of the new super soldier program inspired by the original. Uncle Aaron, who always plays a large part in Miles' life, steals the super soldier serum and keeps it in his fridge, which is where Miles finds it while he's looking for a drink. Turns out Miles is a perfect match for the super soldier serum, and he becomes the new Captain America. It's so cool. Because not only is Miles the new Cap, but Tiana Toombs becomes the Falcon, and Sam Wilson becomes the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., like with the eye patch and everything. Uncle Aaron becomes Prowler after being attacked by Black Widow, and Lonnie Lincoln is the Grey Skull, which is this reality's Red Skull. He seems to be just as powerful as the normal Captain America, if not a little younger and by extension a little more naive. But he's still cool, so. Number 8, Gladiator Cap. Thank the Marvel gods for creating Battleworld. This great amalgamated world gave us tons of different alternate characters and cool little side stories, one of which was Planet Hulk. Captain America and Bucky Barnes fought in a war between the realm of Apocalypse and Greenland, which is a realm inhabited by Hulks, but they were captured and forced to fight in the Colosseum alongside Devil Dinosaur on the outskirts of Doomstadt. At some point, Bucky seemed to be captured by the Red King of Greenland, and the Captain and Devil Dinosaur are sent by God King Doom and his warden Strange to take out the Red King and destabilize Greenland in exchange for also saving Bucky. Now, that's all the premise I really need to see this amazing story and this awesome Captain America variant. He's defeated a group called the Wolverine Clan, he's got long hair, he's battle scarred, he wields a battle axe alongside his tattered patchwork shield, he's a gladiator, and he fights alongside a giant red T-Rex. I mean, number 7, Rogers. Coming back at you with Marvel 1602 yet again, we have a Captain America who initially came from Earth 460. And on this Earth, Purple Man had become president for life, and Captain America was one of the last heroes resisting him, like we'd expect. Purple Man wasn't able to end this Steve Rogers, so instead, he was sent back to the 1600s. Steve now found himself in Virginia, and he aligned himself with a Native American tribe, assimilating himself into their way of life. Steve taught them what he knew about his present time, his language, and, most importantly, the near annihilation of the Native American peoples. His arrival and discovery at this time caused alternate versions of other heroes to start appearing in this now alternate timeline. But it also caused reality to start breaking just a wee little bit. He went by the name Rogers and kept his origins a secret, being mistaken by the English to be descended from Welsh explorers who reached America before Christopher Columbus. He did not reveal himself until much later, when he would be sent back to his time. I love the 1602 story, and I think what Steve becomes falls right in line with his character. He helped the Native Americans to be aware of what the Europeans would do, and he even saved the colonists of Roanoke and became the protector of Virginia Dare. I promise this story is worth a read, just do it. Number 6. Cap Wolf. In the 616 reality, in Captain America Volume 1, number 405 from 1992, Captain America is injected with a serum by Dr. Nightshade that gives him the curse of the werewolf, giving us Cap Wolf. Now, while he ultimately recovers from the curse, in the reality of Earth 666, everyone is some kind of monster version of themselves, so obviously, this version of Cap Wolf never recovered from the curse and remained a werewolf, becoming a core member of the undead Avengers. It's a super soldier werewolf. I'm not too sure what the rules on his power levels would be exactly, but I know he's gotta be more powerful than a regular Captain America, for sure. Maybe a little bit more feral with less of a tactician's thinking, but he's covered in fur, got crazy sharp claws, and I'm sure his bite is worse than his bark. God, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Number 5, it's Venom Cap. With a whole Spider-Verse event, I think it was a genius move for Marvel to create a Venomverse event as well. All the reason I would need is just seeing a whole slew of characters who are venomized. One of the most prominent would be the leader of the Resistance, a Venom-bonded version of Captain America, who first appeared in the Edge of Venomverse number 1 when he started recruiting alternate versions of Venomized heroes starting with the Venom X-23. And let me just say, this Captain America looks awesome. All black, obviously, with white accents. His shield can extend out from his body thanks to the Venom tendrils, but then the Resistance gets attacked by a poisoned out Hulk, and then Cap and a whole bunch of Venom heroes become poisons as well, and they look dope as heck. But still, I'll take the black and white Venom versions over the poison versions any day. Number 4, Bruce Banner. This is a kind of a blink and you miss it moment, which doesn't really make sense for a comic book, but basically in Spider-Man magazine number 4, we get a little story that shows us a Bruce Banner Hulk who seems to have acquired a Hulk-sized Captain America suit, and he also seems to have Wolverine's adamantium claws, and I'm assuming his adamantium skeleton too. He defends the Daily Bagel against Doc Ock and Magneto. But it seems to be a Hulk who has the wherewithal to become this world's Captain America, but he went through the adamantium bonding process that produced Wolverine? That's utterly insane, and I'm not complaining at all. Just wondering when I'm gonna get to see this again, if ever. Please let it happen. I can only assume he's incredibly powerful, but since we don't get to see much of it, this is where I'm gonna put him. Okay? Number 3, Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown, except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the Six and most if not all of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 2, Major Gamma. The thing I love about comic books, and I've mentioned this already in this video, is that they will come up with just the wildest reasons to give us amazing things we all want. So for example, in the 3rd issue of Tarot, a story from 2020, a set of magical tarot cards representing each of the heroes gets cut in half by Valkyrie and shuffled by the villain Diablo. The cards come back together, and as a result, we get amalgamated heroes. Now 2 of these new heroes are a mix of Captain America and the Incredible Hulk called Major Gamma, and a mix of Captain America and the Silver Surfer named Captain Cosmos. It's kind of hard to pick which of these characters would be more powerful. I'd assume Captain Cosmos, but since you've got a Hulk Cap, which I've definitely always wanted more of, I'm gonna stick with him. Yeah. Yes, I have included 2 very different Hulk Captain Americas, but are you really complaining? Because I'm not. And number 1, we got 2099 Captain America. We've had 3099 Cap already, but he isn't really much compared to this one. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. But how is he powerful? Well, this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. That's right, an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 2099 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space. Yes, he looks like a very 90s amalgamation of these two characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful version of Captain America. Number 10. Yeoman America. Back in Avengers Volume 3 Number 2 in January of 1998, Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion wave caused the time period to be altered to a medieval setting which altered the Avengers' clothing, speech patterns, and thought processes. For Steven Rogers, he became Yeoman America, a knight-like soldier with red, blue, and white stars and stripes armor, and weapons including a sword and a more fantasy-like shield. Now, to be clear, this is just regular 616 Captain America, but magically time displaced. So, he's got all of his same abilities, but something about wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword like that makes him just kind of better than himself? In my opinion, I don't know. Number 9. Hydra Cap. While this version of Captain America did appear largely in the 616 reality, he's actually technically from an alternate timeline created by a Hydra brainwashed Cubic, who used her reality warping powers to make Captain America his ideal self. But since she was being influenced by Hydra, his ideal self was a Captain America who grew up being made loyal to Hydra. This Cap would eventually supplant the real Captain America of 616 and would organize the second superhuman civil war, as well as Chitauri invasions on the Earth. He got promoted to director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and influenced the legalization of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Act, which gave S.H.I.E.L.D. way more authority. He used this new power to basically organize a Hydra takeover of America, with Steve becoming the Hydra Supreme and bringing on the Secret Empire event. He was defeated by the proper version of Captain America, brought back by Cubic, but this Steve manipulated his way into an extremely high position of power, banishing mutants, imprisoning Inhumans, creating a Hydra Avengers team, and forcing other heroes into the underground. Number 8. Peggy Carter. If you've seen the Marvel Studios What If show, you know alternate versions of Peggy Carter get the super soldier serum in place of Steven Rogers. Fans love this idea, even if it's strange for a British agent to become Captain America. There are a few different versions of Captain Carter to choose from, but they all generally share the same abilities. There was a version of the character who appeared in Exiles number 3 in 2018 who had a great costume. The one in the Disney Plus show joined the Guardians of the Multiverse, so she was clearly an exceptional version of the character. She's also shown up in a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie sporting a jetpack, and was able to give the villain of that movie a real good run for their money, while other more powerful characters were like felled instantly. She can be a bit more hot-headed than her Steve Rogers counterpart, sure, but she has the power of fan love. And if you know anything about what that power can do, you know that Peggy Carter as Captain America is very powerful. Number 7. MCU Captain America. I find it hard to be able to put most of the MCU iterations of characters into a list of most powerful versions of themselves. The MCU tends to depower a lot of their characters, which I suppose is understandable from like a storytelling perspective. But when this version of Cap wields Mjolnir and smacks around Thanos for a little while, nearly beating him all on his own, a feat the Hulk could not even achieve, and then fights the army Thanos brought with him, all with minimal training wielding the power of Thor, it's honestly a sight to behold. I almost wish they showed us Cap going through time, fixing all the branched timelines the Avengers had created. It would have been so cool seeing the ways he could use the hammer. Like, imagine Captain America flying through the air with his shield in one hand and being dragged by Mjolnir in the other. It would just be really cool. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually become the Captain America of her time. And, well, let's just think about this for a second. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factor of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America. she is the shield. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5. Earth X. If you haven't read Earth X, well, do it. But the basic premise is that in this alternate reality, the people of the Earth all begin to gain mutant abilities. And in the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Captain America specifically was a bit more tragic in this story. For starters, he felt unworthy as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. But this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. But it's when he passed on that he actually became more powerful. Cap turned into one of Marvel's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. His wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually looked like himself. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded an extremely cool sword, but we don't know what its capabilities really are because he never used it. He is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 4. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we're gonna look at 2 who have not been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales, the great grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the biggest among the Captain Americas gathered by Toth Key in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into the wireless systems and stored information of the world. He had all the enhancements we'd expect, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps. Number 3. Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, it seems that Captain America's treatment with the Super Soldier Serum actually seemed to give him a bit more of an edge in terms of his powers. For example, while this universe's Hulk is a bit weaker than the 616 version, he is still incredibly strong. But this Captain America was able to go toe-to-toe for a few rounds against the Hulk, almost actually defeating him and eventually knocking him out, which is like 616 Cap could never do that. Ultimate Cap also seemed pretty capable of handling armies of guys all on his own. He was an extremely capable leader while also being a bit more than a little ruthless compared to his 616 counterpart. Like when he was fighting against the Chitauri Herr Kleiser, his rival. He resorted to traumatizing Bruce Banner to get him to turn into the Hulk and then convincing him that Kleiser was getting it on with Betty Ross so that Hulk would pummel Kleiser into the concrete and then eat him. That kind of wholesome stuff. Nice. Number 2. Soldier Supreme. A cap-wielding Mjolnir? Cool. But how about a Cap with the mystical and magical powers of the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, we get that in Infinity Warps, when Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, basically folds reality in half, merging characters with other characters. One of the two merged together, in case you didn't catch on, is Captain America Steve Rogers and the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange. The result would be Stephen, with a PH, Rogers, the Soldier Supreme. He fought in World War II against the German Hell Priest Dormammu Red, and would use his super enhancements and military training alongside his mystical and magical abilities. During World War II, he teamed up with his Howling Commandos of Hoggoth, including Dum Dum Fury and Bucky Wong. Later, in the modern era, after returning from banishment in the Negative Zone, he would team up with Iron Hammer, Arachnite, and Weapon Hex to battle against Devondra. Number 1. Super Soldier. Seems like when you take one character and smush them together with another character, you get a pretty OP new character. Like Soldier Supreme, or Cap-wielding Mjolnir, or even Danielle Cage to a degree. But what if you took Captain America and you fused him together with one of the strongest characters in all of comic books? Well, in the Amalgam universe, where Marvel characters are mixed in with DC Comics characters, we got Super Soldier. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is Captain America mixed together with Superman. When Clark Kent volunteered for the Super Soldier program, he was injected with a Super Soldier serum containing cellular kryptonite samples from an alien, while also being doused in solar radiation. The result was a power set unheard of for any other Captain America. Super strength over 1 million tons. Invulnerability to everything but Green K, as it's called. Superhuman stamina to the point of being completely tireless. He can fly at speeds of around Mach 10. He has superhuman speed at speeds of about 2,000 miles per second. He can hear and smell anything on Earth. He has a sonic scream that allows Clark to destroy someone's literal essence. No need to eat or sleep. He can heal instantly from most any injury due to his altered metabolism. Clark can create hurricane-level winds by blowing and can also chill his breath to project ice from his mouth. And he has extremely hot heat vision. I think that pretty much covers it, and I don't really need to say more. But you take all that and put it in the mind of an expert tactician and soldier, it's game over for you, buddy. Sorry. Number 10, Lord Iron. I will never turn up the chance to talk about Marvel 1602, otherwise known as Earth 311. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and plops them in the Elizabethan era. And yes, that includes Iron Man. Going by the name Anthony Stark and Lord Iron, his armor is powered by quote-unquote lightning bottles, and was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars, and treated rather harshly by the Hulk, resulting in the requirement of the suit to survive. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, it's not the most advanced and powerful suit, but when looked at with the scope of the technology at the time, it's centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with base Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Like, damn bro, it's nice.
Number 9, Original Tony. Technically I'm talking about a version of 616 Tony here, but this isn't even really like the 616 Tony. Not the one we have now anyways, although at one point this was the 616 Tony. This version of Tony ended up getting amalgamated with his younger self to give us the version that we have now, because this version ended up fighting his younger self. Yep, it all happened as part of the Crossing event. Ah yes, the Crossing event, what a marvelous time. During that event it was revealed that Tony was actually a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate name and persona of Kang the Conqueror's. He is activated and ends up becoming somewhat unstoppable when it comes to the Avengers' power to defeat him, and Kang. Instead, they enlist the help of a younger Tony Stark from the past, who actually almost dies fighting against his older self. In the end, however, Tony has a change of heart, and he basically sacrifices himself to save his friends and the world from Kang. However, as I said, this version of him would later be resurrected and then amalgamated with the younger Tony, who remained in 616 in his place. Together, they would give us the Tony Stark that we know and love today in the comics.
Number 8, Exiles. Tony Stark, the undisputed monarch of Earth. What? Take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Anthony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees, but has the sense to not let them know it, and then be begged to take charge. Tony Stark of Earth 42777 acquired every world conglomerate. He organized a mutant war against humanity and then defeated their leader, Magneto, created a worldwide famine, the likes of which was never seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it, and then he got elected president. He developed weather-controlling technologies to create biblical-level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control. Central America and Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into the fold too, and he made a deal with Dr. Doom, who had attacked the Capitol and then taken out all the other democratic leaders in America, who he also destroyed after receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured just like Emperor Palpatine. He's D-Life the Hulk. This version of Tony Stark is ruthless and powerful.
Number 7, Superior Iron Man. Superior Iron Man is actually a version of Tony from the main continuity, but he's so devious and fantastic that I had to include him. What can I say? I'm obviously a sucker for an evil villain version of Tony Stark, as this is the second one that I've mentioned on this list. I just feel like Tony has so much potential as an amazing villain, and honestly, I would rather see him as a villain than a hero. I know that might be a hot take, but there it is. And you might even say he's not just an amazing villain, he's a superior villain. Ho-ho. Superior Iron Man came about as a result of Iron Man avoiding the re-reversal of alignments back to normal near the end of Axis. You see, Scarlet Witch had cast a spell which accidentally inverted the alignment of a good number of Marvel's premium heroes and villains. Well, she meant to invert them, but not all of them. She meant to invert one of them, and then everyone else got affected too. Oops. Among them was Tony. When this was reversed, so Tony would go back from being evil to good once more, the super smart Iron Man found a way to shield himself, resisting the reversal back to being a hero. Instead, he remained a villain who simply passed himself off as a hero. This version of Tony isn't just smart, he's diabolical, and his lack of ethics means he's willing to do things that his regular, more heroic 616 self wouldn't.
Number 6. Ultimate Universe. Having your mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem sounds like it could go pretty much anywhere, but fittingly for Tony Stark, it led to him being able to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. That's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable. Proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought his demise, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities, plus force fields and cloaking. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, is pretty ultimate.
Number 5. Darkhold Iron Man. As we glimpse into the Darkhold, we get to see into the much darker reality of Earth 21129 when it comes to Tony Stark's tale. Here in Darkhold Iron Man, issue number 1, we meet Tony Stark, who becomes obsessed with the armor that he's building, despite the fact that once in said pieces of armor, they cannot be removed, as they bond to Tony in such a way that removing the armor also removes his skin. In essence, we learn that the armor is kinda like feeding on Tony Stark's organic makeup, fully bonding with him. When he wears the helmet, this becomes evident when we learn that skin and bone are melting away, as the suit has, well, no need of them, because they're like, hey, we're armor, so you don't need that. This Tony Stark is eerily powerful as he threatens to take over the world with his technology, offering everyone the infinite and permanent safety of his suits, at the cost of their own organic lives and bodies.
Number 4. Iron Goblin. Earth 19919, or the Spider Island, basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques. This includes injecting the Hulk with the Lizard Serum, using the Godstone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man, he was sprayed with the Goblin formula used by Norman Osborn to save him. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. You know, the superhero starter pack of abilities, plus all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the serum also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade, one of the most powerful weapons in the Marvel Universe, and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance.
Number 3. Iron Hammer. Iron Hammer is an amalgamation of Iron Man and Thor from the Pocket Dimension universe known as Warp World. Warp World was created when Gamora gained the power of the Infinity Stones and used them to fold the universe in half, merging souls together in doing so to create amalgamated heroes and villains, then feeding those souls to the Soul Gem. Iron Hammer is Stark Odinson, the son of Howard Odin, who is part businessman, part Asgardian god. Iron Hammer wields a hammer and also wears a spiffy set of armor. armor, having the powers of both the 616 versions of both of these heroes.
Number 2. Iron Lantern. Ah, yes, the Amalgam Universe, combining the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel, pitting popular characters from both sides against each other and even fusing some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, HAL for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own to a crashed alien spaceship, and it too crashed. The crash left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which, after meeting the dying alien Romancer, Stark survived using an alien battery, suspiciously in the shape of a lantern, to build a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive though, it gave him the ability to create green solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever classic superhuman strength and durability. Yeah, he'll put his hand on your chest.
Number 1. Infamous Iron Man. Who is Infamous Iron Man? Well, he's Dr. Doom as Iron Man. I know this might seem like a controversial pick for our top spot, but walk with me, or I guess just stand with me, because I can't really walk anywhere. Dr. Doom, despite being a villain, is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. He's not only a genius, but is the ruler of a nation known as Latveria, wielding all the power of his country, his people, and the nation's resources, as well as being an extremely gifted magic user. In fact, there are even futures where Doom becomes Sorcerer Supreme, and if it weren't for Clea showing up in the 616 universe, he would have become Sorcerer Supreme after Doctor Strange died. Also, a lot of what stops Dr. Doom from winning the day is his role as a heel for the heroes, a villain. So when he decided to take up the mantle of Iron Man in Tony's absence, he became pretty much unstoppable, because now there's no reason for him to technically have to lose battles. He's not a bad guy. Well, he's kind of a bad guy, but he's a good bad guy. Villains even banded together in fear of what action Doom might take against them as Iron Man. And when they did band together, he still showed up and then beat them all. So, yeah.